Greg Patterson from BCD Software. He's a senior sales engineer at BCD. He has been in the IT for 17 years, the last 8 with BCD and Quadrant, where he's currently a senior sales engineer, as I mentioned before. In addition to business development activities, Greg also coordinates pre-sales technical demonstrations, performs business analysis, and is sometimes involved at the coding level for specific projects. Greg has a deep knowledge of BCD products from his time spent on the BCD support team. Welcome, Greg, and yes, I'm giving you the screen now.
Hi there. Thank you, Anna. As was mentioned, I'm going to kind of walk through one of our primary tools here today, which is WebSmart, and in specific, I'm going to be talking about the WebSmart PHP version of our tool. Okay. So WebSmart is a rapid web development tool. Really, you can create any type of web application. It's based on the IBM Mine using the Apache web server. The PHP version does use Zen server, which is also running on the IBM I, and on the development side, there's a PC side IDE, or integrated development environment. Our customers use WebSmart to create everything from dashboards to e-commerce sites to portal type websites, intranets, really anything across any type of web programming. And typically it is used on the IBM I, and for the most part accessing DB2 data, but it is possible to the code that's generated by WebSmart PHP is standard PHP code, so it is possible to run on other platforms as well, and as well access other databases. So I'll just mention I'm specifically talking today about WebSmart PHP, but I'll just mention quickly that with WebSmart we do have 3 different editions of the tool. One that generates PHP code, one that generates ILE RPG code, and one what's very recently been announced that is using Node.js. So all 3 of them really can get you to the same point in terms of the types of applications you're running. They just, each one of them just goes about it in a slightly different way. Some of the benefits to using WebSmart, really it's a template-based tool, so you can see results in minutes, and I'll be running through a live example or 2 in a few moments here, where we can really see that happen. And because some of the code is generated for you, you get a certain starting point that can help you with your web application development, and then you can go on and customize sort of the template code as far as you like. Because of that, you can reduce the web development learning curve. You have some pre-built examples for you are ready to go. They're available, and you can really see what we've put into the templates, how certain things are being done, so that you can take that and customize further. You can also leverage existing RPG code and other resources on the platform. Within the tool, you're able to call. We have some procedures or a feature called snippets where or smart snippets, where you can actually sort of walk through a little wizard to get an RPG program call set up. So if you have a logic module that's been proven and is callable, we can call that directly from the PHP code to, for example, produce, if you've got a complex pricing scheme, you can then get that, you can call that existing RPG code to do that processing and return the values to the PHP for further use on the website, and really sort of maintain that existing code and expertise. And some of the other resources we're talking about there as well, perhaps you have web services that are available on either your system or other systems as well, and those can also be leveraged to bring data in that may not be quite as easily accessed in other ways. With the newer technologies, more, I guess, in particular, more the PHP and the Node.js version, you know, with the tool, really, we're using modern technologies, so it makes it easier to attract new developers to the platform. I'm a good example of that. When I started with BCD about 8 years ago here, I didn't know what an IBMI or iSeries or AS400 was in particular beyond at the very highest level, but coming in, I knew how to program in PHP, and I was able to use the tools and learn about the platform as I went. And like I showed some of the examples, whether they're e-commerce or extensions to an ERP system or dashboarding and reporting type applications, really WebSmart can be used to create any type of strategic web application, make it accessible to internal people, make it accessible to external, so customers, vendors, the general public. Really, it's up to you in terms of what the choices are. So I showed this slide before, really, but any application, I'll show some more examples in a little bit here as well, but the templates that I mentioned earlier, they are set up so that you can walk through a series of steps, tell the program what database files are going to be involved, what fields you want to see, the type of functionality, and the code that's generated is either, in the examples I'm going to show today, is primarily PHP for the logic. There's some HTML and CSS and JavaScript that are also included, but we can walk through these templates to get, say, a basic maintenance program up and running within minutes. So I just want to show a couple of other examples here. One of the things, WebSmart version 11 was just released to the public as well, and one of the big keys in that version of WebSmart is we have responsive web design templates. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the term responsive, basically means that the website will react to the device or the resolution of the device to display itself appropriately, regardless whether somebody's on a desktop, a tablet, or even an iPhone. So this is one of our professional services clients in the United States. They have a music store, and just for reference, I'm using Google Chrome to simulate this as a responsive application. It has some tools built into it so that I can show this, and we'll notice I'm going to just change the size of the screen here, and as the screen size changes, we'll see a few things happen. One, the images get scaled down. As we get smaller, the images and the menus, for example, so if I just go back one little step here, you can see that there's a menu along the top, and we've got the 4 images. If I go just a little bit smaller, essentially what's happening is we're hitting a breakpoint, and 2 things happen. First, the menu and everything doesn't fit as well anymore, so we now have a little pop-out menu that's formatted differently to fit this this screen size. And the other thing that happened is we actually have, rather than having the 4 images across the screen, they start to stack. And I'm able to, whether it's responsive or if I want to choose different options, if I choose an iPad, for example, I can do that, or I can even choose, in this tool, I can choose to go down to an iPhone form factor. So in this case, if, let me just hide that menu, if we're right down to, say, an iPhone 6, you can see that the site still displays very nicely. Each of the images are now stacked entirely on top of each other, and all of this happens dynamically. There's one code base that allows you to do this and be able to see everything appropriately, and it really makes the system easy to use and and like I say, accessible from anywhere, and that's really important these days, and only having the one code base to maintain. So just a quick example of some responsive PHP design that we've been involved in. Okay, so I'm going to actually step into the WebSmart tool and show you some examples and go through some of the templates that I mentioned earlier. So from again, this portion is a PC side tool where I can create the applications and they get uploaded to the IBMI. So we're given, there's a whole a series of different templates that are available. I'm going to use, because they're the newest and sort of the hopefully the best direction moving forward, I'm going to use these responsive templates like what I just showed you there, and I'm just going to create a simple, if we're talking a green screen world, subfile, like create, update, delete type subfile program, but obviously we're going to be creating it in using PHP and running it in a browser. So as I step through the wizard here, we're given several different options. We can choose the database type that we're going to connect to. In this case, I have either DB2 or MySQL. I'm going to select DB2. I'll create, I'm going to just call it, it's going to be my customer master listing, and all the other settings here are set up by the actual configuration of WebSmart itself. And I'm able to go through and make some changes to some of the functionality. So I want to show 10 records per page. I want to provide some filters, and the actual functionality that I want to include, I'm going to allow add, display, change, and delete. So the next step is to actually go through and add the database files that are going to be involved. Because WebSmart has come from and always been based around the IBMI, we're tightly integrated with the platform, so we're actually able to go and do something like specify a library, and I'm going to load all the files, whether they're physical files or logical files, to be able to find my different files, just so that in case I don't know them off the top of my head. So I can select that. That's my customer file. Very basic. I'm going to actually, in this case, I'm also going to add some order information, and I happen to know the file name, so I don't necessarily have to browse the server. And because I pulled in two files, the tool itself is going to prompt me to link them together. So I'm going to just drag the customer number. So we've got a customer number on the order table as well as the customer table. They're linked together. We can change the join types and all that. This is a pretty basic example, and you can see actually at the bottom here, it's starting to generate some SQL that's going to be used for the table access. We can do calculated fields where you can write complex formulas if you need to. I'm not going to use that in this case, but what I want to show is I want to show my customer number, my customer name, and I'm going to pull in some order information from my order file. And for the single record display, I am just going to make it so that we can update the customer file. We can choose different filters. In this case, I'll choose a customer number, customer name, and maybe the order date as a filter field, so that somebody using this program would be able to sort or filter out the list very easily. So just with those few steps, when I click Finish, the code has now been generated. Let me just close this old one here. So the code that's been generated, you can see I've got several different tabs here. The first one is PHP source code. This is all the logic, the database connection, and everything. And the rest of the tabs here are really the HTML that's going to make up the different functionality. So before I go too much into that, I'm just going to save this and run the application. And so I've generated it. It's now uploaded that to the IBMI. And when I run it, it's going to launch in the browser. And you can see I now have my application has been created. I'm showing, there's the filters I chose. I'm showing all of my orders, and because I chose enough fields that they don't fit on the screen size, I have a scroll bar here. And you can also, I can choose, there's some tools within the application where I can choose to show more entries at a time on the screen, just like your typical e-commerce type application. And there's also some paging buttons so that I can step through from page to page, and if I want to look at something specific, I can pull up the information that I chose to expose here. And I also, obviously, I can also add a record where I can create basically, in this case, I can create a new customer record directly from the tool here. So some of the functionality that we created here really is the program itself is fairly basic, but the functionality and some of the logic and everything behind it is slightly more complex. But it has all been generated for me and really allows us to really quick a jump start into the application. So all of the PHP code, like I mentioned earlier, it's standard PHP code. In the tool itself, we're able to, if you click on a specific keyword, which in this case is highlighted in blue, and hit F1 or the help key, we go right out to php.net, which is the open source documentation for PHP, and so we can see all the details about the code and what needs to be done with that specific keyword. There are all the functions that we've created have been built here, so if I want to go look to a different function, for example, where we're adding something to the database, we're going to retrieve all the variables, we're going to go and do an insert directly into the database. So there is really to be able to work through and around the system, there's a lot of different code. And as I mentioned earlier as well, there's also, if we want to do something like leverage an existing RPG program, we have some snippets of code which you can add to. So if you're doing something over and over, you can create your own snippets. Or we can do something like this smart program call here, where we can specify a program name that we want to call. So I have a customer pricing program, and it's in my demo library. I can then specify the different parameters that are going in. So customer number is going in. We can have it be both, and price and item, for example. So price is going to come out, item's going to go in, and you can set up the entire basically program call. I'm not going to go through all the steps because of the limited time here today, but once we do that, the code that is going to be generated does all the sort of the heavy lifting. So rather than having to figure out how to code that yourself, with something like our snippets, all that has been set up here. The parameters have been set up, and we do the program call, and we get the results back where we can then work with them on the PHP side. And as I mentioned, you can take any of the code in your system and create a new snippet. So I'll just create a quick test one. This is just going to be some basic PHP code, and I can just say, not very creative, but if we want to add something like that, when I'm back in my code here now, and if I need to add that anywhere specifically, I can just double click on that or drag it in, and you can see that it puts it into the code. So as you work with the tool a lot more and find yourself doing certain things that you might want to reuse, creating those snippets and sharing them among team members can make development a lot faster as well. Beyond the PHP side, we're also generating a fair amount of HTML and CSS. The actual design for the web pages are packaged along with the tool. So, like if we go back to the browser here, the look and the feel. Obviously, you'd want to customize this and put your company name as a logo, or this is a pretty stark white application. You may want to change that. That's something that's just changeable in the CSS, sort of very quickly and easily. You have full access to all of the code that's been generated. So if you need to go and change, or customer master listing, that was the title that I gave this application. That's not really true. This is a customer order listing. And so you can go in and change any of the HTML code, any of the JavaScript code that's generated, and to make it sort of suit your needs. So, e-commerce sites, informational sites, really we can do anything, and you do have full control over the HTML. One thing I'll mention as well, that the responsive templates use the Bootstrap framework. So if any of you are familiar with that, it was originally started by Twitter, but it's designed to be responsive. So we're working with that. If you've got other frameworks or JavaScript libraries that you might want to work with, those you have full control to enter those in, and we do also use the jQuery framework to do certain things as well. So once you get really comfortable, using the tool, there are different types of applications available. Whether it's just a very simple web page, we can do an input-capable subfile if you're doing certain types of data entry. We can just do sort of a simple record listing just for a display or more of a report output, and then just other simple sort of single record type applications. So using the different templates to generate this code and hooking things together is really becomes pretty simple to get a pretty complex application created and up and running very quickly. Some of the resources that we have to help you with that, obviously, in the tool itself, we have links to the PHP documentation. We have a customer website called My BCD Software that has many examples of different things, so specific code examples that you can download and incorporate into your own application. And because in this case it's PHP, there are millions and millions of examples out on the internet, so you can pull any of those in, or other libraries and that type of thing as well. So I just want to jump in to one of our customer sites here just to show it very quickly as well, just to kind of go along with the other example that I showed. This is an e-commerce site. It's all been written using WebSmart PHP. All the menuing and everything, we've got different ways to be able to go in and view the different products that are on offer. And all of the sort of the back end of this system is actually managed with programs very similar to the one that I showed you that I created, where they're able to go in without programming. They're able to go in and create these create the different items, inventory items, and all the features and of them, and put them into the application so that they can publish that for people to go through and be able to go for review or and actually go straight through and purchase. So you know, we're certainly not limited to e-commerce. As I mentioned, we do all manner of different things with the tool. We do have you know, lots of business-to-business type e-commerce applications, the dashboarding type applications, and as I mentioned, there's some of the technical resources that I mentioned are available here. We do also have some training packages, and last but certainly not least, we have a very large professional services team that's very often involved with our clients to not only do the programming, but to do any of the sort of business analysis and sort of discovery about certain projects, as well as the delivery. And we can work, we can obviously do a completely outsourced project end to end. We can get you started and then do some mentoring, or really anywhere along the spectrum we can help you out. And so certainly, if you have any questions, bcdsoftware.com has all the details on our products and links to free trials that we have of the products, so you can really see what they're all about and how they would work in your system. And I certainly would encourage you to get in touch with us if you have any specific interest. And certainly, I know we're pretty much at the end of my time here. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. But otherwise, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Greg, for your presentation. I can see a question for you. Can I call a REST service at an other, for example, Linux server with WebSmart, and how can I have to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can call any type of web services. Typically, what we would do is use something, some sort of a JavaScript like jQuery to call the web service. And we do this all the time for things like package tracking, payment gateways. So yeah, absolutely, you could any type of web service, whether it's SOAP or REST based, and the look functionality certainly is exposed that way.